Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello and welcome to Romance Weekly. This episode is titled Pirates of New York, Part 3, Yo-Ho-Ho and a Bottle of Kambucha.
The morning sun glinted off the skyscrapers of Manhattan as Kara Thompson paced her tiny hostel room. Her mind was reeling from the revelations of the previous night. Time-traveling pirates? It sounded absurd. And yet, "You're not seriously buying this, are you?" Emma asked, watching her friend with concern. Kara sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I know it sounds crazy, but you didn't see them, Emma. The way they react to everything, their confusion about basic technology. It's either the most elaborate act I've ever seen, or you're dating a guy from the 18th century, Emma finished, shaking her head. Kara, honey, I think you need to consider the possibility that these guys are just really committed con artists. Meanwhile, at South Street Seaport, Rusty and his crew were facing a crisis of their own. Their ship, the Salty Wench, had been commandeered by a group of enthusiastic historical reenactors who were now giving tours to wide-eyed tourists. "Avast, ye landlubbers!" a portly man in an ill-fitting pirate costume bellowed from the ship's deck. "Welcome aboard the fearsome Salty Wench, terror of the seven seas." Rusty gritted his teeth, his hand instinctively reaching for his cutlass. "Terror of the seven seas, my eye," he muttered. "That bilge rat wouldn't know a jib from a Jolly Roger." Pegleg Pete hobbled up beside him, his arms full of library books on quantum physics. "Captain, I've been studying these tomes all night. I think I might have an idea of how to get us back to our own time, but we'll need access to the ship." Rusty nodded, a plan forming in his mind. "All right, lads. Time to reclaim what's ours. But first we need to blend in." What followed was a montage of the pirates attempting to disguise themselves as modern New Yorkers. One-eyed Willie struggled with a pair of skinny jeans, while Salty Sam nearly choked himself trying to figure out how to tie a necktie. Rusty, for his part, had donned a "I Love NY" t-shirt and a pair of cargo shorts. He tugged uncomfortably at the strange fabric. "I feel like a right fool," he grumbled. Just then, Kara arrived, carrying a tray of strange, colourful drinks. "Morning, guys. I brought kombucha. It's great for hangovers. Or, time travel jet lag." The pirates eyed the fizzy beverages suspiciously. Rusty took a cautious sip and immediately spat it out. "Blimey, this tastes like the bilge water from a month-long voyage." Kara couldn't help but laugh at their reactions. "Okay, maybe kombucha was a bit ambitious. How about we grab some real breakfast and figure out how to get your ship back?" As they made their way to a nearby diner, Rusty filled Kara in on their predicament. She listened intently, her mind racing with possibilities. "You know," she said as they slid into a booth, "I might have an idea. My cousin works at the Natural History Museum. He's always talking about their advanced research equipment. Maybe they have something that could help." Rusty's eyes lit up. "Lass, you're a genius. But how do we get access to this museum?" Kara grinned mischievously. "Leave that to me. I've always wanted to plan a heist." While Kara made some calls, Rusty and his crew marveled at the wonders of modern breakfast food. Pegleg Pete became particularly enamored with the concept of unlimited coffee refills. "It's like a never-ending grog fountain," he exclaimed on his fifth cup. "The future truly is a magical place." Their meal was interrupted by a commotion outside. They looked out the window to see a group of tourists taking selfies with a very confused-looking hot dog vendor. "Oh my God, your costume is amazing," one tourist gushed. "You look just like a real New Yorker." The vendor, a grizzled man named Gus, who'd been selling hot dogs on the same corner for 30 years, looked utterly baffled. "Lady, I am a real New Yorker. Now, you want a hot dog or not?" Rusty chuckled. "Seems we're not the only ones struggling with mistaken identity in this city." After breakfast, Kara led the group to the American Museum of Natural History. Her cousin, a nerdy but enthusiastic researcher named Max, met them at the staff entrance. Kara, Max exclaimed, hugging his cousin before eyeing the pirates suspiciously. These must be your, friends. Nice costumes. Thanks, lad, Rusty said, tipping his hat. Now, about that fancy equipment of yours. Max led them through the labyrinthine halls of the museum, past exhibits that left the pirates awestruck. One-eyed Willie nearly fainted at the sight of the blue whale model hanging from the ceiling. It's bigger than our ship, he whispered in awe. Finally, they reached a restricted area filled with high-tech equipment. Max, still under the impression that this was all for some elaborate film project, began explaining the various machines. This here is our pride and joy, he said, gesturing to a large cylindrical device. It's a quantum entanglement analyzer. In theory, it could be used to study particles across different points in time. Pegleg Pete's eyes lit up. That's it, Captain. If we could use this contraption to locate our own time, we might be able to create a bridge back. Rusty nodded, only partially understanding. Excellent work, Pete. Now how do we get this thing to our ship? Max laughed nervously. Oh, you can't move this. It's worth millions and weighs over a ton. The pirates exchanged glances. This was going to be more complicated than they thought. Meanwhile, back at South Street Seaport, the situation was deteriorating. The reenactors had gotten into character a bit too enthusiastically and were now engaged in a full-scale pirate battle on the deck of the Salty Wench. "Surrender, you scurvy dogs," bellowed the portly captain, waving a plastic sword. His opponent, a skinny man with a fake parrot on his shoulder, responded by throwing a handful of chocolate coins. "Never! The booty is mine." Tourists watched in delight, snapping photos and cheering on the performance. Little did they know, the fate of real pirates hung in the balance just a few miles away. Back at the museum, Rusty and his crew were brainstorming ways to use the quantum entanglement analyzer without moving it. Kara, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly spoke up. "What if we don't need to move the machine? What if we could bring a piece of your time to it?" All eyes turned to her. "What do you mean, lass?" Rusty asked. Kara's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Your ship! It's from your time, right? If we could bring a piece of it here, maybe that would be enough for the machine to lock onto your timeline." The pirates erupted in cheers, but Max looked skeptical. "And how exactly are we going to get a piece of an 18th century ship past museum security?" Rusty grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Leave that to us, lad. We're pirates, after all." What followed was a montage of increasingly ridiculous attempts to sneak a piece of the Salty Wench into the museum. One-eyed Willie tried hiding a plank under his shirt, walking like he had a back brace. Salty Sam attempted to disguise a ship's rope as an extremely long scarf. Finally, it was Rusty who managed to smuggle in a small figurehead by pretending it was a traditional pirate therapy doll. The security guards, already confused by the group's eccentric behavior, decided it wasn't worth the hassle to question it. As night fell, the group reconvened in the museum lab. Max, who had finally caught on that something truly extraordinary was happening, worked feverishly to calibrate the machine. "Okay," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "I think we're ready. But guys, I have to warn you, if this works, it might create a temporary portal. Anything or anyone near it could potentially be pulled through." The pirates exchanged nervous glances. This was it, their chance to return home. But as Rusty looked at Kara, he felt a pang in his chest. The thought of leaving her behind was more painful than he'd expected. "Kara, lass," he said softly, taking her hand. I don't know how to thank you for all you've done." Kara squeezed his hand, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm going to miss you, you know. Who'd have thought I'd fall for a time-traveling pirate?" Their moment was interrupted by a loud bang from the machine. A swirling vortex of blue light appeared in the center of the lab, growing larger by the second. "It's working!" Max shouted over the noise. "But it's unstable! You guys need to go now if you're going!" The pirates began jumping through the portal, whooping with excitement, but Rusty hesitated, his eyes locked with Kara's. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. Rusty was torn between his crew, his life in the past, and this incredible woman who had shown him the wonders of the future. Just then, a security guard burst into the lab. "What the hell's going on in here?" The sudden intrusion startled everyone. Rusty, still holding Kara's hand, lost his balance. As he stumbled backward towards the portal, he instinctively pulled Kara with him. In a flash of blue light, they both vanished into the vortex, leaving behind a bewildered Max and a very confused security guard. As the portal closed, the lab fell silent. The guard turned to Max, his mouth agape. Did they just... Max nodded slowly, still staring at the spot where his cousin had disappeared. "Yep, they did." "I don't get paid enough for this," the guard muttered, turning on his heel and walking out. As the dust settled in the now quiet lab, one thing was clear. The adventure was far from over. Somewhere in the swirling currents of time, a pirate captain and a 21st century woman were about to embark on their greatest journey yet. And back at South Street Seaport, blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding across town, the reenactors on the Salty Wench were just wrapping up their final show of the night. As the last tourist disembarked, the portly captain turned to his crew with a grin. "Same time tomorrow, lads?" he asked, removing his fake beard. "I've got a great idea for a new scene. How about we add some time travel? If only he knew."
Romance Weekly is a production of Calaroga Shark Media. Executive producers Mark Francis and John McDermott. Portions of this podcast may have been created with the assistance of AI.
Calaroga Shark Media.